The manila envelope felt heavy in my hands, though it contained just a few sheets of paper. My fingers trembled as I pulled out the documents, and there it was, the proof that my entire life had been built on quicksand. I'm Bridget, and until 10 minutes ago, I thought I was having a normal Tuesday morning at my environmental law firm. Now I'm staring at property transfer documents for my beloved coastal home, signed by my husband Logan. Correction, my soon to be ex husband, without my knowledge or consent. Bridget, Grayson knocked on my office door. The Morrison case files are ready for. Hey, are you okay? I looked up at my mentor and friend, vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. He sold our house, Gray. The bastard sold our house. What? How is that even possible? Remember when I signed those papers he claimed were for refinancing? I laughed bitterly. Turns out I signed over my rights to the property. God, I'm such an idiot. Grayson crossed the room and picked up one of the scattered documents. Who sent these? Anonymous package. But wait, there's more. I pulled out the glossy brochure. Introducing Ocean Vista Luxury Condominiums. Guess where they're planning to build? No. Grayson's eyes widened as he recognized the pristine coastline in the renderings. That's protected land. The habitat studies alone would normally take years, I know. But look who's heading the development. I pointed to the name at the bottom of the page. Sophie Anderson? Grayson whistled low. Isn't she the reason my marriage is over? Yeah. My phone buzzed with a text from my daughter Rhea. Mom, Dad's acting weird. Can you pick me up from school early? I need to go get Rhea, I said, standing up. But first, I pulled up Logan's contact and hit dial, putting it on speaker. He answered on the third ring. Hey, Bridge, I'm kinda busy. Busy selling our home to your girlfriend's development company? Silence. Then, how did you save it? You know what that land means to me, to us, to Rhea. The tide pools where she learned to swim, the beach where we spent every summer. It's just property, Bridget, and it's done. The papers are signed. Through fraud, I spat. You really think I won't fight this? Fight what? It's perfectly legal. Maybe if you weren't so busy saving every endangered butterfly, you'd have read what you were signing. Grayson grabbed my arm as I started to shake. Logan, he said firmly, you might want to lawyer up. Gray? Should have known you'd be there. Listen, Bridget, take the money and move on. Sophie's plans are already in motion. Sophie's plans? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Tell me, does she know about the protected species surveys, the environmental impact reports, the coastal commission requirements? You wouldn't. Watch me. I ended the call and slumped into my chair. Grayson squeezed my shoulder. What's the play here? First, I pick up my daughter. Then, I gathered the documents, my lawyer brain already cataloging potential legal angles. Then we stop them, not just because he betrayed me, but because that land deserves better than being turned into another soulless development. The personal is political. Grayson nodded. You know this won't be easy. Nothing worth fighting for ever is. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, then paused. Gray, thank you for everything. Always. Now go get your girl. We'll strategize tomorrow. As I drove to Rhea's school, my mind raced through possibilities. Logan thought he could steamroll over 15 years of marriage, over protected habitats, over everything we'd built together. He thought wrong. Rhea was waiting at the curb, her long dark hair, so like mine, whipping in the coastal wind. She climbed in, looking worried. Mom, what's going on? I took a deep breath, remembering my promise to always be honest with her. Your father made some decisions that are going to change things for us, big things. But I want you to know that whatever happens, we're going to face it together. She studied my face, too perceptive for 14. Is this about the house? I heard him on the phone talking about selling it. My heart clenched. Yes, honey, but I'm going to fight for it. Not just the house, but everything it represents. The coastline, the wildlife, our memories. Good, she said firmly. That's our home, and those tide pools are important. My science teacher says they're like nurseries for the ocean. I smiled, pride mixing with determination. Exactly. Want to grab some ice cream and talk about it? Can we go to the beach after? One last time, maybe? Not the last time, I promised, turning toward our favorite ice cream shop. Not if I have anything to say about it. And I had plenty to say. Logan and Sophie had no idea what they'd started. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice, about standing up for what's right. And I was just getting started. Look what I found in Logan's desk drawer. I spread the letters across Grayson's kitchen table, my hands still shaking from the adrenaline of breaking into my old home office. Love letters, dozens of them, dating back months before he asked for the divorce. Grayson picked one up, his eyebrows rising as he scanned the page. Sophie certainly has a way with words. Our coastal paradise awaits. She was planning this from the start. There's more. I pulled out a folder of documents, preliminary development plans from 8 months ago, building permits filed under a shell company, environmental surveys that looked suspiciously rushed. Coffee? Grayson asked, already moving to his kitchen. I have a feeling we'll need it. Make it strong. I sorted through the papers, my lawyer's eye catching every suspicious detail. They've been laying the groundwork for this development long before Logan even mentioned divorce. The doorbell rang, and Grayson returned with Yvonne, our local environmental activist. Her eyes lit up at the sight of all the documents. Sorry I'm late, she said, dropping her bag. Had to finish up at the Marine Conservation Center. What have we got? I handed her the development plans. They're trying to fast-track everything. Look at the date on that environmental impact report. 2 weeks? Yvonne scoffed. A proper survey takes months. This is a joke. A joke that could destroy protected habitat, Grayson added, setting down 3 steaming mugs. The question is, how do we stop it? My phone buzzed. A text from Rhea. Dad's here with Sophie. They're talking about moving in together. I hate this. First, I said, typing back a quick response, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Yvonne, what species are we looking at in those tide pools? Several endangered species, including the black abalone. Plus, it's a critical breeding ground for... Another buzz interrupted her. This time it was an email from Morgan, the developer, announcing a town meeting about the exciting new Ocean Vista project. Perfect timing, I smiled. They're giving us a platform. You're not thinking of going public already? Grayson asked. Why not? They think they've got this wrapped up. Let's show them otherwise. I stood up and started pacing. Yvonne, can you get your conservation group to attend? We need numbers. Consider it done, and I can bring evidence of the actual wildlife impact. Gray, we need legal precedents, similar cases where development was stopped due to environmental concerns. He was already typing on his laptop. On it. But Bridget, you should know. I did some digging on Sophie. This isn't her first rodeo. She's got a pattern of targeting valuable coastal properties through personal means. You mean sleeping with the owners? I laughed bitterly. Wish I'd known that earlier. My phone rang. Logan. I put it on speaker. What the hell are you doing at my house, Bridget? Our house, Logan. The one you fraudulently sold. I was just collecting some interesting reading material. Those letters are private property. Like the tide pools you're planning to destroy? Don't worry. I left plenty of evidence for your lawyer. Speaking of which, see you at the town meeting next week? This is harassment, he sputtered. Sophie says, Sophie says, tell her to check her facts about the black abalone population. Her environmental survey seems to have missed quite a bit. I hung up, hands shaking again, but this time with excitement rather than anger. He sounds nervous, Grayson observed. He should be. I pulled up the town meeting details on my laptop. Look at this. Morgan's listed as the primary presenter. Want to bet Sophie keeps her name off everything official? Smart Money says she's pulling the strings but keeping her hands clean. Yvonne agreed. Classic developer tactic. My phone buzzed again. Rhea, can I come to your office after school tomorrow? I want to help. I smiled, typing back. Absolutely. Bring your science notebook. We need to move fast, I told my impromptu team. The development plans show they want to break ground in 3 months. That's impossible, Yvonne protested. The permits alone. Unless they've got someone on the inside. Grayson finished. I'll start checking the permit office records. And I'll rally the conservation community, Yvonne added, gathering her things. We'll need every voice we can get. After they left, I stayed at Grayson's table, reading through Sophie's letters again. One line caught my eye. Once the old house is gone, we'll build something magnificent, something worthy of our love. I pulled out my phone and texted Logan one last time. Hope Sophie's love is worth it, because by the time I'm done, that's all you'll have left. Then I blocked his number and opened my laptop. Time to start drafting my presentation for the town meeting. Logan and Sophie thought they could erase 15 years of memories and destroy protected habitat for their coastal paradise. They were about to learn exactly what happens when you underestimate a mother's love for her daughter, her home, and the environment she's sworn to protect. The town hall buzzed with nervous energy as people filed in. I stood at the back, watching Morgan adjust his microphone at the podium while Sophie whispered something in Logan's ear. They hadn't noticed me yet. Mom! Rhea appeared at my side, clutching her science notebook. Ms. Peterson came with half the biology club. Perfect. I squeezed her shoulder. Ready to show everyone what's really at stake? Born ready. She grinned, reminding me so much of the little girl who used to spend hours cataloging tide pool creatures. Yvonne rushed over, waving a newspaper. Have you seen this? Someone leaked the full development plans to the Coast Guardian. I took the paper, scanning the headline. Protected coastal habitat. Threatened by luxury development, environmental regulations bypassed? Look at their faces, Rhea whispered. Across the room, Sophie was frantically showing her phone to Morgan, while Logan had gone pale. Good. Let them squirm. The mayor called the meeting to order, and Morgan stepped up to the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here to discuss an exciting new opportunity for our community. Ocean Vista luxury condominiums will bring jobs, tax revenue, and modern housing options to our beloved coast. He clicked through glossy renderings of glass and steel buildings while I counted down the seconds. Right on cue, Yvonne's hand shot up. Yes, the woman in the back. Yvonne Harding, Marine Conservation Center. Could you explain how these plans account for the endangered black abalone population in those tide pools? Morgan's smile flickered. Our environmental survey? The 2-week rush job? I stood up. Bridget Walsh, environmental attorney. I'd love to hear how such a brief survey identified all protected species in the area. Sophie stepped forward. We followed all proper procedures, like having the property transferred through fraudulent means. I pulled out copies of the letters, or planning this development months before the legal owner was even aware of the sale. The room erupted in murmurs. Logan started toward me, but Grayson blocked his path. Order, please. The mayor banged his gavel. Ms. Walsh, these are serious allegations. With serious evidence, I moved to the front, Rhea at my side. My daughter would like to present her ongoing research on the tide pool ecosystem. Rhea stepped up, voice clear and strong. I've been documenting the marine life in these tide pools for my advanced biology project. In the past year alone, I've identified 3 protected species that aren't mentioned in the developer's survey. She clicked through her own presentation. Detailed photographs, population counts, breeding cycle data. The audience leaned forward, captivated. This isn't just about one piece of property, I added. It's about protecting a critical habitat that belongs to all of us. The sale is legal, Sophie snapped. The development will proceed. Really? I projected the Coast Guardian article onto the screen. Because according to this, several permit applications contain irregularities that warrant investigation. Morgan's face darkened. Who leaked those documents? Does it matter? The truth was bound to come out. An elderly man stood up. My grandchildren learn about marine biology in those tide pools. You can't just destroy them. More voices joined in, the mood in the room shifting rapidly. Sophie grabbed Logan's arm, whispering furiously. He shook her off, heading for the exit. Wait, Rhea called out. Dad? He stopped, turning slowly. Rhea, this is complicated. No, it's not. She held up her notebook. You taught me to care about these creatures. Remember? You used to say they were special, that we were their guardians. The room fell silent. Logan looked at our daughter, then at me, then at Sophie's scowling face. The meeting is adjourned, the mayor announced. Clearly, this project requires further review. As people filed out, many stopped to talk to Rhea about her research. Yvonne was already organizing a protest group. Grayson collected contact information from potential witnesses about the permit irregularities. Sophie stormed past me, Morgan in tow. This isn't over. You're right, I replied calmly. It's just beginning. Later, over ice cream with Rhea, my phone exploded with notifications. The Coast Guardian article had gone viral, picked up by national environmental news sites. Mom? Rhea asked, picking at her sundae. Did you leak those documents? No, honey, I smiled, but I made sure the right people knew where to look. Do you think we'll save it? The house, the tide pools, everything? I thought about the determination I'd seen in the town hall, the way the community had rallied. I think we've got a fighting chance, and more importantly, we're fighting for what's right. Sophie looked pretty mad. She grinned. Sophie's about to learn that some things are more powerful than money or manipulation. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Like the truth, and tide pools, and daughters who know how to stand up for what they believe in. My phone buzzed, a text from Grayson. Local news wants to interview Rhea about her research. Ready to take this to the next level? I showed it to Rhea, who straightened her shoulders and nodded. Bring it on. Looking at her fierce expression, I felt a surge of pride. Logan and Sophie thought they could bulldoze their way through our lives. Instead, they'd helped create something stronger. A mother and daughter united in purpose, backed by a community ready to fight for its natural treasures. The protest signs bobbed like colorful buoys against the gray morning sky. I stood with Rhea at the edge of our old property, watching Sophie's black Mercedes pull up to the tide pools. Right on schedule, Grayson muttered, adjusting his camera. And look who she brought. Morgan stepped out first, followed by 2 men in suits I didn't recognize. Sophie emerged last, her designer boots crunching on the gravel as she approached our group. This is private property, she announced. You're trespassing. Actually, I held up a document. We have a temporary injunction allowing scientific observation of protected species. Would you like to see the court order? Her perfectly painted lips tightened. Morgan, handle this. Mrs. Walsh. Morgan stepped forward, all fake sympathy. Let's talk privately. I'm sure we can reach an arrangement. Like the arrangement you made with the permit office? Yvonne called out, her phone recording everything. The one under investigation? Morgan's face reddened. These allegations are groundless. Mom, Rhea tugged my sleeve, pointing toward the tide pools. They've got equipment. A truck was backing up to the shoreline, carrying what looked like survey tools and marking stakes. Stop! I moved forward. You can't bring equipment onto this site while the injunction is in place. Watch me, Sophie snapped, signaling the truck driver. Mom, the tide's coming in, Rhea said urgently. The abalone. Call it in, I told Grayson, who was already dialing the environmental protection hotline. Sophie stormed over to me, close enough that I could smell her expensive perfume. You think you're so clever, don't you? Using your daughter to play on people's emotions? Better than using my body to steal other women's husbands. Her hand shot out, but I caught her wrist before she could slap me. The camera clicks were almost deafening. Assault? I released her. Really? That'll look great in tomorrow's papers. You bitch, she hissed. Logan was right about you. So self-righteous, so sure you know what's best for everyone. Speaking of Logan, I looked around. Where is my ex-husband? Too ashamed to show his face. A commotion near the truck drew our attention. Rhea had positioned herself between the survey equipment and the tide pools. Young lady, Morgan called out, move aside. No. Her voice carried across the beach. These pools are part of a protected ecosystem. You can't mark them for construction without proper environmental review. Rhea! Logan's voice cut through the wind. He was jogging down the beach path. Get away from there. Why? She stood her ground. So you and your girlfriend can destroy everything we used to care about? The crowd had grown, phones recording the confrontation. Logan reached for Rhea's arm, but she jerked away. Remember when you taught me about the sea stars? Her voice cracked. How they can regenerate their arms if they're hurt? You said nature always finds a way to heal itself if we just protect it long enough. Logan's face fell. Honey, it's not that simple. It is that simple. She pulled out her research notebook. Everything in here, all my observations, they're based on what you taught me. Was it all lies? Sophie appeared at Logan's side. We don't have time for this. Morgan, get the survey team. Nobody moves, a new voice commanded. Two uniformed environmental protection officers approached from the parking lot. We've received reports of unauthorized activity in a protected habitat zone. We have permits, Morgan started, which are currently under review. The officer cut him off. All activity stops until the investigation is complete. Sophie whirled on Logan. Do something. But Logan was staring at Rhea, who stood firm beside the tide pools, tears streaming down her face. I can't, he said quietly. She's right. What? Sophie's voice rose to a shriek. I said she's right. Logan stepped back. This was a mistake. All of it. The officers began taking statements while the crowd pressed closer. Sophie grabbed her phone, speaking rapidly to someone as she stalked back to her car. Morgan followed, already damage controlling with the press. I moved to Rhea's side, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. You okay? She nodded, wiping her eyes. Did you see Dad's face when I mentioned the sea stars? I did. You got through to him. Too little, too late, she muttered. Logan approached us hesitantly. Bridget, Rhea, I'm sorry. Save it, I said, but not unkindly. Actions speak louder than words. If you're really sorry, prove it. He looked at the tide pools, then at the retreating developers, then back at us. What do you need? The truth, I said. About the permits, the planning, all of it. And your support in protecting this place. He nodded slowly. Sophie won't like that. Since when did Sophie's likes matter more than your daughter's future? The tide was coming in now, water filling the pools where Rhea had spent so many happy hours learning about life's delicate balance. Sometimes I realized It takes the threat of losing something precious to remember why it was precious in the first place. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters and environmental activists. Rhea clutched my hand as we pushed through, her other hand holding her research binder close to her chest. "Ready?" I asked her. She nodded, eyes fixed on the entrance where Sophie and Morgan were giving statements to the press. "This frivolous lawsuit is nothing but a bitter ex-wife's attempt at revenge," Sophie was saying. "The development will bring jobs and prosperity and destroy critical wildlife habitat," Rhea called out, her voice carrying across the steps. Cameras swiveled toward us. "Ms. Walsh." A reporter thrust a microphone in my face. "How do you respond to accusations that this is personally motivated?" "This case is about protecting endangered species and upholding environmental law," I replied. "The fact that the developers obtained permits through questionable means only underscores the importance of proper oversight." Inside the courtroom, I spotted Logan sitting alone, away from Sophie's team. He caught my eye and gave a slight nod. His sworn statement about the fraudulent property transfer lay in my briefcase, a decision that had earned him Sophie's very public fury. Judge Martinez called the court to order. Morgan's lawyer spoke first, all polished confidence as he presented their environmental impact studies. "Your Honor," he concluded, "these development plans fully comply with all regulations." "Objection," I stood. "The defense would like to present evidence that these studies were deliberately rushed and incomplete." "Proceed," I called our first witness. "The court calls Rhea Walsh." Sophie's face darkened as Rhea took the stand. My daughter looked tiny behind the wooden panel, but her voice was steady as she took the oath. "Rhea, please tell the court about your research at the tide pools." She opened her binder. "For the past 2 years, I've been documenting the marine life as part of an advanced biology project. I have detailed records of 3 endangered species that weren't included in the developer's survey." "And how often did you conduct these observations?" "Weekly, sometimes daily. I have photographs, population counts, and breeding cycle data." She held up her carefully labeled charts. "The black abalone colony is one of the largest remaining in the state." Morgan's lawyer stood. "While this is very impressive for a student project, we have professional surveys." "Conducted in 2 weeks," I interrupted. "Your Honor, I'd like to call our next witness, Dr. Harrison from the State Marine Biology Institute." The distinguished marine biologist testified about proper survey protocols and the impossibility of conducting thorough endangered species assessments in just 2 weeks. During the lunch break, Logan approached us in the hallway. "Rhea, you were amazing up there." She gave him a small smile. "Thanks, Dad." "Logan!" Sophie's sharp voice cut through the moment. "What are you doing?" "Talking to my daughter," he replied firmly. "You might want to rethink your position, Sophie. Those permits won't hold up." "Is that a threat?" She stepped closer. "Remember what you have to lose." "No." He looked at Rhea, then at me. "I remember what I've already lost." Back in session, I presented Logan's statement about the fraudulent property transfer. Sophie's face went from angry to worried as I connected the dots between rushed permits, falsified documents, and environmental violations. "Furthermore," I concluded, "we have evidence that Ms. Anderson has a history of similar schemes in other coastal communities." "Objection," Morgan's lawyer jumped up. "Relevance?" "Overruled," Judge Martinez said. "Continue, Ms. Walsh." I projected a timeline onto the courtroom screen. "These documents show a pattern of targeting valuable coastal properties through personal relationships, followed by rushed development applications that bypass environmental protections." Sophie stood abruptly. "This is character assassination." "Sit down, Ms. Anderson," the judge warned. I called my final witness, a former business partner of Sophie's from another coastal development project. His testimony about their previous methods left Sophie white-faced and Morgan looking distinctly uncomfortable. Your Honor, I summarized, we've demonstrated clear violations of environmental law, fraudulent permit applications, and a deliberate attempt to circumvent protected species regulations. We ask for an immediate halt to all development plans and a full environmental review of the property. Judge Martinez took off her glasses. Given the evidence presented, I'm granting an immediate injunction against any development activity. Furthermore, I'm ordering a criminal investigation into the permit application process. The gallery erupted in whispers. Sophie stormed out, Morgan hurrying after her. Logan remained seated, looking relieved despite everything. Outside, Rhea hugged me tight. We did it. We did it. The tide pools are safe. Reporters swarmed around us, but Yvonne and her conservation group formed a protective circle, leading us down the courthouse steps. Mom, Rhea said as we reached the car, can we go to the beach? I want to check on the tide pools. I looked at my daughter, no longer the little girl who first fell in love with sea stars, but a young woman who'd found her voice fighting for what she believed in. Of course, I said. There still are tide pools to protect. As we drove toward the coast, I caught sight of Sophie and Morgan arguing intensely in the parking lot. Their carefully constructed plans were crumbling like sandcastles at high tide, and I couldn't find it in myself to feel sorry for them. Some victories taste like revenge, but this one tasted like justice. You need to see this, Grayson said, dropping a thick folder on my desk. Sophie's past is even darker than we thought. I opened the folder and spread out documents from 3 different coastal development projects. Each one followed the same pattern: a wealthy property owner, a whirlwind romance, and suddenly transferred deeds. How did you get these? Remember that tip from her former business partner? He pulled up a chair. Turns out he kept everything: meeting notes, emails, even recorded conversations. My phone buzzed. A text from Logan. Sophie's losing it, threatening to expose everything about everyone. Need to talk. Everything about everyone? Grayson read over my shoulder. That sounds ominous. Let's find out. I dialed Logan's number, putting it on speaker. Bridget? Logan's voice was hushed. Are you alone? I'm with Gray. What's going on? Sophie's at Morgan's office right now, trying to convince him to move forward despite the injunction. She's got dirt on half the city council, apparently. Of course she does, I muttered. What kind of dirt? I don't know exactly, but... He broke off. Hold on, someone's coming. We heard muffled voices, then Sophie's distinct tone. Who are you talking to? No one, Logan said. Just checking messages. Liar, something crashed. You're warning her, aren't you? After everything I did for you? Sophie, calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. I made you rich. I gave you an out from your boring life with your self-righteous wife. And this is how you repay me? The line went dead. Well, Grayson said after a moment, that was dramatic. My office door burst open and Rhea rushed in, waving her phone. Mom, have you seen the news? She pulled up a local news website. The headline read, Developer Morgan Walker distances himself from Ocean Vista project, cites irregularities in process. He's throwing her under the bus, Grayson whistled. My phone rang again, an unknown number. Bridget Walsh, a woman's voice said. This is Amanda from Morgan Walker's office. Mr. Walker would like to meet with you privately. I looked at Grayson, who nodded encouragingly. When and where? The Lighthouse Cafe in 1 hour. Come alone. The Lighthouse Cafe was nearly empty when I arrived. Morgan sat in a corner booth, looking considerably less polished than usual. Thank you for coming, he said as I sat down. I'm assuming you've seen the news? That you're abandoning Sophie? Yes. Question is, why now? He slid a USB drive across the table. Because of what's on here. Sophie's been recording everything, collecting leverage on anyone involved in her projects, including me. And now you're giving it to me? Why? Because she's out of control. This morning she tried to blackmail 3 council members into overturning the injunction. When that failed, she threatened to expose everyone. Including you? He nodded grimly. I've done things I'm not proud of, but this project? He gestured at the drive. Take it, use it, just keep my name out of it. Why should I trust you? Because unlike Sophie, I know when I'm beaten, and because that drive contains proof that she's done this before, multiple times. My phone buzzed with a text from Yvonne. Sophie just showed up at the tide pools. She's acting erratic. Police called. I have to go. I stood up. But Morgan, if you're playing me, I'll make sure you go down with her. Fair enough. I broke several speed limits getting to the beach. Police cars lined the parking lot, lights flashing. Rhea ran to meet me. Mom, Sophie was trying to destroy Dad's research equipment. She kept screaming about ruining everything. Logan stood with the officers, giving a statement. Sophie sat in the back of a police car, mascara streaking her face as she yelled through the window. You, she screamed when she saw me. This is all your fault. No, Sophie, I said calmly. This is what happens when you build your success on other people's destruction. At least I built something. What have you done except chase butterflies and save stupid tide pools? I taught my daughter integrity, I replied. Something you wouldn't understand. An officer approached me. Ma'am, we'll need statements from you and your daughter about the property dispute and Ms. Anderson's previous actions. Of course. I pulled out Morgan's USB drive. And I have something you might want to see. Later, watching the sunset from our beloved tide pools, Rhea asked, Do you think Sophie will go to jail? That depends on what's on this drive and how many of her former victims come forward. I picked up a small shell, turning it over in my hand. But either way, she's lost her power over this place, over all of us. Dad says he's going to testify against her. Good. I wrapped an arm around my daughter. Sometimes the hardest thing is admitting you were wrong, but it's also the first step toward making things right. The tide was coming in, washing away footprints in the sand, but leaving the tide pools and their precious inhabitants untouched. Some things, I realized, were stronger than the forces trying to destroy them. The final hearing felt more like a public execution than a court proceeding. I sat between Grayson and Rhea as Sophie's entire empire crumbled in real time. The evidence is overwhelming, Judge Martinez declared. Multiple instances of fraud, blackmail, environmental violations, and conspiracy to commit property theft. Sophie's lawyer kept trying to object, but each attempt was weaker than the last. The USB drive had revealed everything: recorded conversations, offshore accounts, a decade of carefully orchestrated schemes. Your Honor, I stood when called. The prosecution would like to call one final witness. Sophie's head snapped up as Morgan walked into the courtroom, her face contorted with rage. You traitor! Ms. Anderson, control yourself, the judge warned. Morgan took the stand, his testimony devastating in its detail. He outlined every step of their standard operation, identifying valuable coastal properties, researching the owner's vulnerabilities, and Sophie's careful seduction of targeted men. And the environmental surveys? I asked. Falsified, all of them. We had a network of corrupt officials who would rush through the permits. Sophie launched to her feet. He's lying. Logan, tell them he's lying. But Logan, sitting in the witness box, just shook his head. No more lies, Sophie. She crumpled into her chair as Morgan continued describing their operation. When he finished, the courtroom was dead silent. Judge Martinez shuffled her papers. Given the evidence presented, this court finds the defendant guilty on all counts. The sentencing was swift and severe, significant jail time, massive fines, and complete forfeiture of all assets gained through fraudulent means. Furthermore, the judge continued, all properties involved in these schemes will be returned to their rightful owners, or, where appropriate, designated as protected land. I felt Rhea squeeze my hand as Sophie was led away in handcuffs, still screaming about betrayal and revenge. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Ms. Walsh, how does it feel to have exposed one of the largest environmental fraud schemes in state history? This was never about personal victory, I replied, drawing Rhea close. It was about protecting our natural heritage and standing up for what's right. Logan approached through the crowd. Bridget, Rhea, can we talk? We found a quiet corner away from the cameras. I've been thinking, he said, running a hand through his graying hair. The house, our house, it's yours if you want it back. The court's returning the deed. Dad? Rhea looked up hopefully. I know I can't fix everything I broke, he continued, but maybe this is a start. I studied his face, the familiar creases around his eyes, the unfamiliar humility in his expression. The house was never just about property, Logan. It was about trust, family, memories. I know, and I destroyed that trust. But watching Rhea fight for those tide pools, seeing her stand up for what she believes in, he smiled sadly. She got that from you. From both of us, I corrected. The old you, anyway, the one who taught her about sea stars. A commotion drew our attention. Morgan was leaving the courthouse, surrounded by federal agents. They're seizing everything, Logan explained. All the development companies, the properties, the accounts. Sophie's empire is gone. Good, Rhea said firmly. The coast deserves better. Speaking of which, I pulled out some papers. Yvonne and I have been working on something, a proposal to turn the coastal property into a marine education center, complete with protected tide pools and a research facility. Logan's eyes widened. Really? Rhea's research would be part of the founding exhibition. I handed him the proposal. We could use someone with development experience on the board, someone who understands both sides of the issue now. He took the papers, hands trembling slightly. You'd trust me with that? Trust has to start somewhere, Rhea said, like those sea stars growing new arms. Later that evening, we stood on our old back deck, watching the sunset paint the tide pools in gold. Yvonne and Grayson were inside, going over plans for the education center. The sound of their excited discussion drifted out through the open windows. Mom? Rhea leaned on the railing. Are we really gonna live here again? Do you want to? She nodded, but different this time, better. Like a tide pool after a storm, I said, the same, but renewed. My phone buzzed. A news alert about Sophie's case. The story had gone national, sparking investigations into similar schemes across the country. Our little fight for one piece of coastline had turned into something much bigger. Ms. Peterson wants me to present my research at the State Science Symposium, Rhea announced. She says it's not just about marine biology anymore. It's about environmental justice. I watched my daughter's face glow with purpose and pride. Sometimes the biggest victories come from the smallest beginnings. A girl's love for tide pools, a mother's need to protect what matters, a community's willingness to stand up for its natural treasures. The tide was coming in, and with it, the promise of renewal. Not just for the coast we'd fought to protect, but for all of us who'd been transformed by the fight. The ribbon-cutting scissors felt heavy in my hands as I faced the crowd gathered outside the New Coast Marine Education Center. Camera flashes popped while Rhea stood beside me, beaming at the Walsh Tide Pool Research Laboratory sign above the entrance. Ready? I whispered. She nodded, placing her hands next to mine on the scissors. Together, we cut the blue ribbon as cheers erupted from the assembled crowd. And now, the mayor announced. "I'd like to invite our founding director to say a few words." I stepped up to the podium, looking out at the familiar faces. Grayson and Yvonne sat in the front row, both grinning proudly. Logan stood at the back, more gray at his temples now, but looking more like his old self than he had in years. When my daughter first fell in love with these tide pools, I never imagined they would become the center of such transformation, I began. But sometimes the smallest ecosystems teach us the biggest lessons about resilience, adaptation, and renewal. Movement caught my eye. A group of elementary school students pressed their faces against the laboratory windows, eager to see inside. "This center represents more than just conservation," I continued. "It represents what happens when a community stands together to protect what matters." And now, I'd like to introduce the person who inspired it all, our lead youth researcher, Rhea Walsh. Rhea took the podium with confidence that made my heart swell. "Hi, everyone. Before we go inside, I want to show you something." She held up a clear container filled with seawater. Inside, a small sea star moved slowly along the glass. "This is Hope," she explained. "We found her after a storm last month, missing 3 arms. But look." She pointed to the tiny new arms beginning to grow. "She's healing, rebuilding, just like we are." The crowd applauded as we opened the doors. People flowed into the center, exploring the interactive exhibits Rhea had helped design, each featuring a different aspect of tide pool life. Logan approached as I watched Rhea leading a group of kids through her research display. "She's amazing," he said softly. "You did that." "We all did," I corrected. "Even you in the end." He nodded toward the development plans displayed on one wall. The original condo designs contrasted with the education center's environmentally conscious architecture. "Sophie's appeal was denied," he said. "She's serving her full sentence." "I know. Morgan's testimony sealed it." "Do you ever—" He hesitated. "Do you ever regret how public it all became?" I watched Rhea demonstrate proper tide pool observation techniques to the entranced students. "No, some things need to come to light, like tide pools at low tide." Yvonne rushed over, tablet in hand. "Bridget, the State Environmental Board just approved our expansion proposal. We can add the butterfly sanctuary." I laughed. "Still chasing butterflies, just like Sophie said." "Speaking of which," Grayson joined us, "you might want to see this." He pulled up a news article on his phone. "Coastal development fraud cases spark nationwide environmental protection reform." "Your little revenge story started quite a movement," he said. "It stopped being about revenge a long time ago," I replied. The day flew by in a blur of tours, demonstrations, and congratulations. As sunset approached, I found Rhea sitting by her favorite tide pool, the same one where she'd first learned about sea stars. "Hey, scientist," I sat beside her. "Proud of yourself?" "Yeah." She dipped her fingers in the water. "But Mom, I've been thinking about something Sophie said at the trial, about building things." "What about it?" "She thought she was building something important with those condos, but she was really just destroying stuff. We built something better, didn't we? Something that helps people understand why places like this matter." "That's exactly what we did." "And Dad?" She glanced toward the center, where Logan was answering questions about the building's sustainable design features. "He's different now, better." People can change, honey. Like your tide pools, they're never exactly the same from one day to the next, but they keep going, keep adapting. A splash drew our attention as Hope, the 3-armed sea star, made her slow way across her pool. Above us, the Education Center's solar-powered lights came on, illuminating the path for evening tide pool walks. "Ready for tomorrow's first official school group?" I asked. "Born ready." Rhea stood up, brushing sand from her jeans. "Those kids won't know what hit them. By the time I'm done, they'll be total tide pool warriors." I laughed, following her inside where Grayson and Yvonne were setting up for tomorrow's opening day. Logan gave us a wave as he headed out, looking more at peace than I'd seen him in years. The center hummed with possibility, all our hard work transformed into something lasting, something meaningful, not just a victory over those who would destroy beauty for profit, but a promise to future generations that some things are worth fighting for. Mom, Rhea called from the lab. Come look at this. Hope's growing another arm. I smiled, heading toward my daughter's voice. Some victories taste like revenge, but the best ones taste like hope.